Hey, how's everybody doing? Welcome back to the Hot Rod Workshop. Today, it's a miserable rainy day here in Pennsylvania, so I figured we'd take it easy, stay inside, and have a quick discussion of an age-old topic: electronic ignition versus old-fashioned points. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, it's a good idea to go back and kind of review the basics of a internal combustion engine's ignition system. I'll try my best to not make this too long-winded. So, we have a piston on the compression stroke of a internal combustion engine, creating somewhere along the realm of 100 to 200 psi of air-fuel mixture that we need to ignite in order to create power. Yes, another visual aid video, I apologize. Now, in order to create a strong enough spark to ignite the air-fuel mixture in the cylinder, we're going to need a few things. We're going to need a 12-volt battery, an ignition coil, a distributor, and a spark plug inserted to the top of the cylinder. So your battery is your source voltage. The job of the coil is to generate enough electricity to jump the arc in the spark plug, creating the spark strong enough to ignite the air-fuel mixture. And the distributor is exactly that. It distributes the spark to whichever spark plug at the right timing to properly ignite the air-fuel mixture and run the engine. Now, your coil has two circuits, a primary and a secondary. Your primary is your low voltage, your secondary is your high. If you were to run power straight through your primary and head to ground, which is heading back to the battery, you remain 12 volts. Now, if you were to break the ground off of your primary and introduce ground into your secondary, you now induce an electromagnetic field inside your coil, boosting your power from 12 volts to somewhere around 22,000 volts. That 22,000 volts is then sent to your distributor, sent down your wire, and to your ground, which is your spark plug, which is plenty of power to ignite the air-fuel mixture. So we have the supply, we have the power generation, we have the distribution of power to each cylinder. Now we just need a switch to switch between grounding the primary and grounding the secondary. And that's where the points come in. So we crudely wire up our primary circuit with our points so we can send our power back to ground. But once we open our points, this circuit is no longer, and we are now sending high voltage from the coil to the distributor and distributing the power from there to the spark plug. Now, some of the electromagnetic field can bleed through to the primary and potentially arc at the points and cause damage, and that's what the condenser there is for, is to keep the damage and keep the arc from occurring at the open stage of your points. Now, once that cylinder has fired and the distributor begins its travel to ignite, to complete the circuit into the next cylinder, this circuit gets interrupted because the breaker or points are now closed and the primary circuit is reintroduced. So what's the point of all this paper and wasted welding rod? It's just a visual aid to help show your base purpose of points and exactly what you're replacing when you go with a simple electronic ignition. So, with an electronic ignition, you eliminate your points, you eliminate your condenser, and you introduce what's called a Hall effect trigger. Now, your typical aftermarket electronic ignition conversion kit comes with two parts. You have your Hall effect module, and you have your magnetic pickup that takes place of the cam lobes inside your distributor. Works almost the same way. Instead of having a mechanical operation to open and close your points, you now have a Hall effect scenario between two magnets. So when the magnet on your distributor comes in line with the magnet on the module, it then electronically breaks the connection between your primary circuit and introduces the connection to your secondary high voltage circuit. So in so many words, it replaces the dependence of a mechanical device to switch between your primary and secondary circuits, and introduces a electronic switch that's dependent on an electromagnetic field. So the question at hand, which is better, electronic ignition or points? And to be honest, there are pros and cons for each. The pros of having a points system is they're cheap, reasonably easy to find. Who knows what it's like now at the parts stores, but I still think they're easy to find. And in most times, they're easy enough to replace. The cons, on the other hand, is they do require adjustment every now and again. So they are something that you need to tune up and keep an eye on as time goes by and miles pile up. They're also a wear item. Over time, your condenser will get weaker and they will allow a strike or arc in between the 2 points in an open scenario, and it will eat away at the contact points. Now, some pros and cons about the electronic ignition. I find them to be super reliable. As long as they're installed correctly, you really shouldn't have many issues with them. They are pretty much adjustment free. You set your timing and you go, and there's less components to fail. With a point system, you have your points, your contacts, and you also have your condenser. 2 points of failure. This is now just 1 point of failure. That being said, they are awfully expensive. I remember when these used to be 50, 60 bucks. I just recently looked and they're up there maybe 120 some odd dollars. That makes it a little more painful to keep one of these on hand in your glove box in a situation where one does fail. But I still think, my personal opinion, if you want to go with points, have at it. They are reliable. They worked just fine for a long period of time before everything went to electronic ignition. As long as you keep one on hand and you know how to replace it and you know how to make your adjustments, you're good to go. Personally, I like the igniter. Now, let's talk about some options that you have with electronic ignition. Of course, you got your Protronix igniter, igniter 2, igniter 3. I like these ones. I also have on hand a Mallory Unilite. This is an older style, I believe. I think the only difference is it's still a Hall effect sensor, but the pickup is actually involved in their own kind of proprietary rotor here, I believe. I didn't really investigate too much into this one. Now with points, they're the basic scenario. So I did find this guy. The Philcos are pretty cool because they have a condenser built in. So I'm assuming you could just remove the condenser off the body and, I don't know, clean up your distributor look a little bit. And I'm sure in your hunt for speed parts, you'll probably find something along the lines of this. This is a dual point distributor from Mallory. And what's interesting about these is they, of course, have 2 points. Now you can watch as the cam operates the points. The task of a dual point distributor is to distribute the electrical load between 2 sets of points, therefore doubling the life of your points. How it does that is you have a set of points that makes the circuit and a set of points that breaks the circuit. So when one set of points closes, the circuit is now closed. The second set of points closes, doesn't really do much of anything because the circuit's already closed. Now, the first set of points opens, circuit's still closed because of the second set of points. Then the second set of points opens. Therefore, this set of points has the closing task, this set of points has the opening task, doubling the life of the points. So I hope that answers anybody's question about whether or not electronic ignition, at least the simple conversion kits, are better or worse than running points. Ultimately, it comes down to whatever you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with having an electronic ignition and spending a little bit more cash and having a spare in your glove box, which I always recommend you do no matter what direction you go, points or electronic, then certainly go for it. But there's nothing wrong with points. Just be mindful that it is a wear item. It is something that could fail a little bit more frequently than electronic module, in my personal opinion. So just keep a good set of points and a condenser on hand and know how to make your proper adjustments, and you'll be fine. Now, if you do decide to go with electronic ignition, I cannot stress enough the importance of installing the device correctly. There is a certain possibility of you getting a bad part right out of the box, but I have heard a lot of horror stories, a lot of people blaming the device, saying it's too expensive and it failed right out of the box, or I blew it up because of blah, blah, blah. 9 times out of 10, it's installed incorrectly. That's why it failed. If you have any questions or any doubts as to how to install it, stop what you're doing, ask the right questions, get the right people involved, install it correctly. You shouldn't have any issues after that. It also doesn't hurt to, like I said, have an additional module in your glove box to replace a bad module when you're out, 150 miles away from home. It's expensive, I know, compared to points, but it's good insurance to have in case a module were to go on you. So at the end of the day, to each his own. You like electronic ignition? Great. You like points? That's great too. We're all having fun driving hot rods. We just want to make sure that we all get home when we're done, right? In any case, thanks for watching. Did you leave your pineapple here? Can you turn around? Good girl.